You're at the threshold of walking into something bigger, better, brighter, newer, higher than you've ever seen. It's time to be positive again. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the Magic Mirror. Today we're just going to be doing a little chit chat because by now you'll probably have seen I did a really big year ahead reading. It should be uploaded on my channel. So whenever you have some time to put that on and just listen to it in the background, I would highly recommend watching that if you're interested in just getting the scoop on what could be coming up for you in different seasons, and also just some guidance on how to progress through the rest of this winter season. I'm gonna be real with you guys. January, it was a cool month. What really hit me the hardest was that I forgot it wasn't all on me. I fell a little under the weather towards the end of January. I also had schedule changes, going back to school. Y'all should know by now I'm a student as well. I'm an adult student. So when you have abrupt changes, even if they're not abrupt, even if you know, okay, I'm going back to school on this day or whatever it is, it just can be a lot. You know, the holidays, working through the holidays, having a birthday, having like different expectations of where you should be, what you should be doing, how you should be doing it versus the reality of where you actually are. And these are all things that I've brought up in different videos. And so, even though they may be channel messages for the collective, they're also channel messages for me. They're reminders for me. They're guidance for me as well. And I'm taking heed to them too. So, without taking too much more time, I want to get into a very, very important topic. You can consider this an urgent message because for some of us, it's really freaking urgent. It's time to be positive again. You'll hear me say a lot in my content that 2020, the pandemic, the quarantines, all of those things took a lot out of us. Things that we may not even realize got taken from us until even years later from where we are right now. I think that we are truly, truly moving into a new space, opening a new book. Spirit says we're getting ready to open a new book, not just a new chapter, not just a new season, not just a new level, but we're starting a whole new story. We're rewriting our lives. Okay? We're at a very important point in time where we get to choose to be different. We get to choose to say, yeah, I don't even know who that old person was. That's not me. That's not how I do things anymore. And it's not to say that we're erasing ourselves, we're erasing our mistakes, we're ignoring or forgetting everything from the past because we need a lot of those things in order to remain self-aware. What I'm saying and what I've been getting from spirit, that it's time for us to be crazy positive again. I've been seeing a lot of content starting off this year where they're like going 10 years back and saying like, oh, you know, this was 2016 and look at how much fun we were having in 2016 and look at what we were wearing, look at what we were doing, look at the music from 2016. And, you know, it's kind of been this trend as we get the year kicked off. For me, 10 years ago, I was fresh out of high school. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with myself, but I was just filled with passion and I was exploring myself creatively. I was exploring myself in other ways as well. It was just kind of like this explorative phase. I felt like I really, really knew what I wanted to do in life. Like I felt like I had a calling, but I just wasn't secure and sure of it. 2016 was a time that was filled with a lot of distractions, but it was like positive distractions. And I use positive loosely, okay? Don't think of it as like all butterflies and roses and sparkles, okay? Because a lot of things that popped off in 2016 was the same that we needed to get out of our system during that pandemic, okay, during that quarantine, okay. A lot of us picked up some bad habits, picked up some nasty friendships, some nasty relationships back in 2016 that really had no business in our lives. That's exactly what the pandemic, the quarantine, all of that, the 2020 and the years following, that is exactly what got cleared out with all of that social distancing. All that to be said, though, there was a lot of positivity in that time span. And I know for a lot of people that I kind of grew up with, or a lot of people who are my peers, you know, we can look back to that time and they'll say things like, oh, it just seemed so much easier back then. A lot of times we don't understand that sometimes things are just easier because you have someone to share the load with, you have community, you have the perspective or a different mindset to handle things a different way, right? And so it wasn't easier. You just were not so focused on everything being perfect or everything going wrong, or, you know, you just weren't focused on all of that. And now that our eyes have been opened so much, we can't close them. Ever since 2019, 2020, 2021, I would even go as far to say 2022. I feel like our breaking point was like 2019 to 2021. That was a lot. I know for me, I was torn up, baby. A lot of times things seemed easier because we had people to depend on, people to rely on, people who we felt like were helping us carry the load. We were distracted in our feelings, different things that made us feel good temporarily. So it didn't seem so bad back then, right? If we're looking back 10 years, and I don't know what your story is, you may have had a horrible 2016. You may not have the same story that I have, but I just encourage you to try to remember that time period, because here's a little bit of astrology that I'll give to you. I believe at that time in 2016, Saturn may have probably been in Libra. And I'm not 100% sure, you know, all of the transits and things that were going on at that time. And I'm not going to go back and look. But I just want to guesstimate and say Saturn was probably in Libra and Jupiter was either in Cancer or Leo, right? And so, you know, a lot of what was going on at that time was all about us focusing on positivity, focusing on joy, focusing on creativity, focus on love, focus on friendship, focusing on community, sisterhood, brotherhood. Um, you know, these are kind of the themes that were going on at that time. Even though we don't have those exact same transits going on, we can still choose to implement some of those same things, but from a elevated standpoint. I made a short touching on some of these same topics that I'm about to discuss right now, but this is very, very important that you hear this in this time. I remember when I first got into spirituality and I first started learning about ATR and everything like that, you know, there was a lot of language in the spiritual community about toxic positivity. Because at the time, when we go back to even just 2019, and we had this kind of spiritual reawakening where everybody was talking about ancestors again, and everybody was getting into spirituality kind of sort of simultaneously, or maybe they were just publicizing their spirituality. that conversation kind of came up around toxic positivity because a lot of the new age teachings, because if you're unaware, there is ancestral practices, traditional practices, blended practices, and then there also is New Age, which is, I believe, a blend of different philosophies and practices, kind of like globally. But in my opinion, New Age is not the same thing as practicing hoodoo or something that is a diasporic form of religion, especially for Black people. I think that Black people or people of color can be into New Age, but like New Age and hoodoo is not the same thing. And I think a lot of times people kind of mix that up. Hoodoo is not necessarily like a traditional religion for some people. They just think, oh, you're just kind of doing your own thing. You're mixing some herbs, you're burning some candles, you're saying some prayers and whatever, right? I think it's a little, it's definitely deeper than that. New Age does have a lot of toxic positivity teachings, a lot of like conditional statements, like if you do this, then this will happen. And all these teachings, they sound like affirmations, and they kind of lean on you having this perfect behavior, believing that everything's going to be okay. And if you train your mind to just constantly be basically as delusional as possible, that somehow you're going to manifest your dream reality, your dream timeline, and you're going to get everything you want, right? Kind of like that law of attraction type of thinking, forcing yourself to stay positive no matter what. And it really erases all the work that you actually have to do that's ugly. A lot of times healing is being able to look at the ugliest things in yourself, the ugliest things in other people. It's being able to see the things that you don't want to see and then actually changing it. And changing it is not always going to be feeding yourself affirmations. It's not always going to be forcing yourself to have this perfect behavior where everything is all good, everything is namaste. That's not going to work in the long term. What this message is really about is not about returning to toxic positivity, okay? It's retraining your mind, retraining your entire being to hope for the best again. Some of us have gotten to a point in our spiritual journey where we've become so awakened, so knowledgeable. Um, we've worked on so many things. We can kind of be so woke that we end up asleep. I remember one of my family members said that to one of my siblings because they were just so like nonchalant, and they didn't care about any positive thing that was going on, in their young life. They were just so nonchalant and whatever about everything. And my family member was like, "Man, you so woke, you sleep." you know? And I kind of feel like that's how a lot of us are right now in our spiritual journey. Sometimes you can be hyper aware, you can be hyper fixated, you can be obsessed with what's going to go wrong to the point where you develop a fear of living, you develop a fear of experiencing, and you don't even give yourself an opportunity to exercise the gifts you claim that you have. If you're so intuitive, if you're so awakened, if you're so knowledgeable about all these spiritual things, if you're so connected to God and your ancestors, why can't you see the good in anything anymore? Why can't you give people a chance to prove you wrong? At minimum, I'm going to bring up the energy police again because I haven't done that in a while. But some of us are energy police. Some of us We claim we're empaths, we claim we're all these things, but it's really just a barrier to that we put up, or a label that we give ourselves to excuse us from having to be vulnerable. We are rehearsing negativity. We're recounting the past. We're recalculating the past in our minds, in our hearts, in our spirits, and we're not present. So we think that we are reading the room, we're receiving a download, we think that we're reading the energy, when the truth is that, and I had an experience like this the other day. If you really were walking by faith, if you really were using your gifts, if you really trusted God, and if you really trusted your guides, you wouldn't be so afraid to have certain experiences. You wouldn't be so afraid to live your life. I'm not saying you should be toxically positive again. And I don't think Spirit and our collective ancestors are saying that either. But, there was a time where we just let something be good until it wasn't good anymore, and then we made adjustments as needed. There was a time where we lived life like that. I'm not saying that was the best way to live life, because that is a very naive, delusional way to live life, where you see the red flags, but as long as it's lit, as long as I'm in my feelings, as long as we having a good time, I'm not gonna say nothing. I ain't gonna change nothing. I ain't gonna switch nothing up. I don't think that's healthy, especially with the awareness that most of us have right now. I do think there is something to be said about not prematurely labeling or having an anxiety attack about things that haven't even happened yet. Being more and more and more present in your journey. Many of us struggle with positive thinking. Many of us struggle with learning how to be positive again, refueling our lives with gratitude, positivity, love, and light because of fear. And fear takes us out of the present moment. Instead of just being in this one moment, looking around and seeing how you can impact the moment, how you can change the moment, how you can co create the moment with the universe, with God, with your guides. You're sitting there shivering in fear. You're shaking and you're thinking about everything that can go wrong. And time is passing, and opportunities are passing, and relationships are passing. People who love you are passing you up. People who are inspired by you are passing you up. People who you can learn important and valuable lessons with and from are passing you up. Opportunities for you to really use your spiritual gifts, opportunities for you to really trust yourself, opportunities for you to really see God's favor, opportunities for you to really see how your ancestors will show up. All that is being blocked because of negativity. I switched jobs. That was one of my heaviest lessons last year. I have a lot of employment stories and a lot of employment struggles. Oh my goodness, a lot of employment story times that I could just sit up here and do. I don't be wanting to get into some of those stories because, yeah. But nonetheless, last year that was just a one of the biggest breakthroughs I made, was decided to resign my position and go somewhere else. That was something that I should have done months ago, but the lesson in that was to trust myself. Over 6 months later, been out of that job, and I told myself I was not going to go back there. I was not going to visit anybody. I was not going to see how things turned out, how everybody's doing. I just swore I wasn't going to do that, right? A couple days ago, I decided, you know what? I am going to go up there, and I'm going to look at the renovations, and I'm going to go see what's going on and whatever, right? What God showed me in that moment, only the people who I was meant to have contact with. Only the pure spirits, the pure souls that I was meant to see and touch were there to see me. The people who I had no business being in contact with and the people who had no business being in contact with me, I didn't see them. They weren't there. So I got to go up there, be positive, be loving. I hugged a lot of people. We caught up and we chit chat a little bit. There was no negativity. And so my fear of going back to a place where I was harmed and mistreated, my fear of interacting or being perceived by some of these people who targeted me, I had to give to God. And I did give it to God. That was protection that I had to leave up to my guides. And guess what? Like I said, I didn't even come into contact with those people. It was about me deciding how I was going to show up first and foremost. That doesn't mean that you're always going to be protected from every negative person, everybody that mistreated you in the past or whatever, when you decide to show up with positivity and love and an open mind, right? But here's the thing, sometimes we have to realize that some people, God is going to allow them to see you because that's their karma. Their karma is to see you still beautiful, still looking good, smelling good, feeling good, doing better, getting paid more. That's their karma, to see that they ain't stopped and you're still protected. The moral of the story that I shared with you is that I was letting fear and I was letting other people and I was letting the negativity that was in my own mind stop me from showing up the way that I wanted to show up, living in the present moment and enjoying the present moment. And when I actually did that, it was none of what I thought it was going to be. As you know, I watch spiritual content. Some things that I've noticed, especially like with readings of the year that I've been watching from different spiritual practitioners online. I noticed like a lot of language, like, and a lot of focus on. I was watching somebody's reading of the year, or whatever, and they just kept saying like, spirit is telling me a lot of dark energies. They kept talking about dark energies, and I'm like, oh my God, it can't be that much doggone dark energy like in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so I just want to encourage you because this is a real spiritual message, okay? Even without the cards, all right? It's an urgent message because we're in a number 10 energy, and I know some spiritual people online are saying it's a number 1 year, but whether it's a number 10 or a number 1, okay? Because remember, the 10 is the end, the 1 is the beginning. So you could look at it from either perspective. But what you need to understand is that you're at the threshold of walking into something bigger, better, brighter, newer, higher than you've ever seen for yourself, for your family. You're like right at the threshold. Okay, so that threshold could be the end or the beginning. You choose what it's going to be for you, but you don't want to go into wherever you're going with that same negative mindset that you've kind of adapted yourself to, whether it be during the pandemic, during the quarantines and all of that stuff, or whether it's just from things that you haven't really dealt with fully, traumas that you still sweep under the rug, heartbreak that you're not being honest about. And again, we're gonna talk about heartbreak some more, guys, because that is something. Heart healing is a big, big, big theme for the year of 2026, okay? I want you to be very, very careful about watching spiritual content, watching motivational content that constantly talks about things being so bad. What you're doing is you're continuing to tell yourself, you're continuing to program yourself for the worst case scenario. And I remember in 2025 running across a video or a post online where it said the same way that you prepare for the worst, you can also prepare for the best. And I don't know what it was about that simple statement, but that really got me together. It's true. The same way we prepare for people not liking us, we prepare for rejection, we prepare for the worst case scenario. We prepare to get cheated on, we prepare for all these different things. We can also focus on setting our standards for the best case scenario. What do I really want out of this situation, out of this relationship, out of this friendship, out of this experience? What do I want? And then we can now focus on things meeting or exceeding our expectation versus the flip side where we're worried and we're anxious and we're not even able to just kind of have a playful spirit about what could happen. If it doesn't meet our standards, it doesn't meet our expectations, okay, well, that's not for me. But what if it exceeds it? What if it meets your standards and expectations with ease? What if it shows you new things that you didn't even know about yourself, that maybe you didn't even list as a standard or expectation, but now you're like, okay, this is a requirement. I'm never going without this again. If you're a person that watches spiritual content and things of that nature, I want you to lean more towards motivation. I want you to lean more towards upliftment and encouragement versus people who are just telling you about the next problem that's on the way. We don't need to be focused on too many things like that. And I'm not saying that we don't need every now and then to talk about the dark side and the darkness and to be aware of what may be targeting and attacking us and all of those different things. But some of us have become overly focused on that to the point where we suck all the life, all the opportunity, all the possibility, all the potential out of a situation before we even really experience it. I'm gonna wrap this video up with a few things that I want you to practice stop doing in 2026. Okay, the first thing that I want you guys to stop doing is stop claiming the struggle. Some of us, we talk about everything in like the worst way possible. Every year was the worst year. Every month was so hard. Everything is hard. Everything is so bad. Stop even framing up stuff like that. If you do need to talk about a challenge that you had, you need to be way more detailed than, ooh, that was horrible. Ooh, that was so bad. Ooh, just summing it up to be such a bad experience. You need to be a little more detailed. What was bad about it? Why was it bad? Did you learn something from it? If not, how did you move from that? How did you maneuver the situation to get to the other side? You have to start training yourself simply by the way that you talk. So let me say that one more time. The way you talk, the way you address situations, the way you label situations, the way you claim and take ownership of whatever experiences that you're having, that language is very telling on the viewpoint that you have of your life. And if you listen to yourself talk and everything you say is, ooh, that was so bad, and ooh, this year was horrible, and ooh, this month was just so hard, you need to change your language. And you need to start either being more specific about the issues that you're facing. Try to find something positive that you can speak on instead of just summarizing everything as, ooh, this was so hard, this was so bad, this was so tough, this year exhausted me. Did it really? I feel like sometimes some of us be over exaggerating like too much, because at a certain point it becomes like a issue of when is it going to be enough? Like, when are you going to have a good month? When are you going to have a good year? When are you going to have a good week? Like, you have to decide that it's good. We have to examine if we're really truly struggling or if we're just exacerbating imperfections in our life. Because sometimes, guys, we're not struggling. We're just not perfect. Our lives aren't perfect. We're in this process of becoming. I'm literally sitting in a room. Everything I have in this room comes from a different period of my life. And I've gotten rid of a lot of different things. I'm almost 30 years old and I have lived with two of my romantic partners in serious, we had serious relationships. I've lived with two of them and, I started decorating our home and it didn't work out. So I have a bunch of stuff from two different homes, and then I have stuff that I grew up with and stuff that I've collected from different places I've been and people I've been around. And I have a bunch of stuff around me that's from all these little broken up puzzle pieces of my life. And I can look around my room and I can say, wow, this makes me feel like I have such a messed up life because I have a piece from here, a piece from there, a piece from here, a piece from there. But I love how every piece fits together because it's beautiful and it's unique and it's my creation. And so when you see your months, your years, your weeks, your days, your moments like that, like a continual effort, a continual process, work of art. You won't be so negative about the way you perceive what you're going through. The last thing I want you to do in 2026 to start restoring positivity, restoring and filling your mind back with a well of positivity is that I want you to start practicing acceptance, looking at things more realistically. Duality is reality. And I have an article about this on Tumblr. It's very, very long, but it is about the Saturn and Aquarius transit wrapping up. It is from it's probably from 2 years ago by now, and it talks about how we're constantly existing between different realities. We're constantly existing between negative and positive. We're constantly existing between good and bad. And so a lot of things are not black and white. A lot of things in our life are gray, are imperfect. When we learn how to more so ebb and flow instead of existing in binaries of it's either good, it's either all this way or all that way, we'll make it a lot easier for ourselves. We'll start to be grateful for the things that meet our standards, meet our expectations, the things that do serve us in some way. And we'll start to even see the ways that we're blessed beyond expectation, beyond what we ask for in other people, in ourselves, in God, in life. We do have to have some level of acceptance because, and this is a sneaky form of negativity, when we reject everything. Rejection is a very, very sneaky form of negativity. We reject things unknowingly. Acceptance allows you to not just see only the good, not just see only the bad, but it allows you to be present with what is actually in front of you. And then you get to decide from that point how you're going to move forward and how you're going to do what's best for you and do what's most positive and uplifting and encouraging to yourself. When we reject everything, when we deny everything, even the good things, we hurt ourselves. Then we're saying that nothing is ever good enough. No one is ever good enough. I'm never good enough. Whatever I'm experiencing is not good enough. And so we're constantly taking ourselves out of the present moment. We're never fully in the moment. We're never fully living our life. We're never thankful because we're in this spirit of rejection, 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 rejection. Eventually, that has to stop. If you want to restore your positivity, if you want to clean up your thinking, If you want to have peace of mind again, you're gonna have to practice acceptance on some level. You're gonna have to start saying, yes, okay, this is what it is. And it doesn't have to be all good or all bad, but it just has to be an acknowledgement of the present. What this all comes down to, opening ourselves back up to spirit, opening ourselves back up to God. When we allow ourselves to be positive again, and this is different from toxic positivity, okay? Because toxic positivity says, if I do this, then this will happen. And even if it don't happen, you still believe and force yourself to think and behave that way, even if it invalidates your feelings, even if it invalidates your reality, because it's toxic positivity. What I'm telling you to do is not to be toxically positive going forward, but open yourself back up to what God can do in your life. That's the type of positivity that we need to have going forward. It's not an affirmation. Yes, it may be some prayer, but it's not forcing anything. It's just simply being open, having an open mind, setting the intention that I know I'm protected. I know that if something is not for me, I'm going to praise God that it was stopped before it even got started. And I'm going to allow God to give me the lens, give me the filter to point out everything that I need to be thankful for in this present moment so that I can raise or maintain a frequency of life where I'm constantly being poured into. I'm constantly experiencing love. I'm constantly experiencing getting my needs and desires met. It gets easier and easier every step of the way to get back to maybe some of those things that we had in 2016 that we feel like we're missing today. You don't have to be a delusional person, but is your spirituality, is your spiritual practice, is your religion, is your faith in God, is your ancestral work based in false intuition, false psychic gifts, false empathy, false knowledge, false faith? Or is it based in surrender, gratitude, prayer, intention setting, and knowing that you're supported and allowing yourself to exist on the lightest, softest frequency, the frequency that says, I'm not burdened with all these things that I think I'm burdened with. I'm not blinded by negativity, and I can accept each and every moment as what it is.